All right. Well, I do like to start on time, and thank you for being on time. This is the first time that we've scheduled a webinar with iPro, and I imagine it takes a bit of time just to get familiar and make sure that it's worth everyone's while, as well as the scheduling aspect. But definitely after practice hours, something we can do. So we will take some feedback. Hey there, Murray. Thank you. We'll take some feedback if there's a better time. It can perhaps be during the lunch hour sometime. And I think the idea is just to kind of keep an open forum and make it easy. So people can click the link, you can take it all in. You don't need to interactive chat, but we we feel like some of these topics are moving pretty quickly, so it's okay to have updates once in a while on this. So with that, I will actually just kick off. This will be recorded, so it'll be shared back for the group anyway. And again, we want to shape this as much as possible, make it be relevant. So 20 to 30 minutes just to run through what is cybersecurity. You've heard of it. You hopefully have had no issues with it, but things are moving so quickly out there that we wanted to explain a little bit what to look out for, just a simply awareness. And then from there, what tools can you use and what resources do you have available to, set up a proper defense mechanism for this. And this, whether you're a big company or small company, it affects everyone equally. And I would argue that the smaller independent practices are probably more vulnerable because, you've got a lot of things on your plate, a lot of different priorities. So this would be one. And speaking from experience, I've worked with practices. It's very devastating to get involved with any cybersecurity incidents. So we'll go into it, and hopefully it's a starting point in the conversation. And definitely we want to make sure everyone is at least having a common discussion around it, what iPro can do to set up properly for this. So what we're talking about today is essentially protecting your assets and ultimately setting up some kind of a safeguard system so that you are steps better than you perhaps are today. Okay. Click through the slides. Again, I'm just going to make sure that these slides are coming through okay. I'll just look to the chat. So if everyone's following along, just give me a little sign and it'll give me an indication. Thank you. But ultimately, this is a good time to bring this topic out because a lot of people are talking about it. Cybersecurity it's the month of October where they're trying to build a cybersecurity awareness month. And I'm not sure if that's something you'd heard of, but ultimately it's becoming more something that is a collective effort to build awareness on. So we're certainly part of that. Thank you, Chris. So with the mini agenda, again, 20 minutes just to go through some of the main bullet points. We just wanted to dive in right away and talk about what are some optometry scam examples. That's probably the number one thing that you could benefit from, which is what could cross your plate? How could you get into trouble with this? And we'll just get that right out of the way. Following on from that, how do you protect yourself? And then so on. Is it education? Is it technical firewalls and things? How do you work through a recovery plan? And then, who do you bring along to help you ensure that you can actually enjoy your work and you're not constantly stressing about this kind of thing? Okay, let's go through it. Okay, so I think ultimately what's changed between the past and the present is this whole era of AI. So AI, yes, you've heard a lot about it. A lot more tools becoming automated and useful. But this combination of AI plus scamming and hacking, it's here. It's definitely here, unfortunately, and of course for independent optometrists. And what's interesting is about it is there is no safe place to hide with this. It's as niche as you can get. So if they want to run an attack on, the more they know about you, the more damaging it can be because you would treat it like a regular discussion. Somebody's talking to you about an optometry topic, you'd think, well, this is not a scammer. They're asking me questions about optometry. That's how sophisticated it is. You can't take anything for granted. You really have to revisit every single new relationship that comes across your desk. Okay, so just straight to the point, what is the goal? What is the goal for you as a practice owner with this topic of cybersecurity? Ultimately, it hasn't changed much from what it would have been in the past. You just want to prevent unauthorized access to keep control of your systems, your critical practice assets at all times. So I don't want to get too technical with everything, but ultimately you don't want people in your stuff. You're going to have authorized users, but it just takes one little backdoor, one little access, and all of a sudden you've lost control, and that's not a good situation. So want to keep that being the goal. Now, quickly, which one is the scam of these three, A, B, or C? I'm not going to tell you now. I just want you to get an idea that these all look pretty familiar. You got an invoice, you got a QR code, and you've got the credit card transaction. So maybe somebody's online shopping. So we're going to cover this at the end. So hopefully you get a little bit of a taste of just how scams don't look like scams. All right. So with this slide here, we really just want to start the point of what's the worst that could happen. And there's really some areas that people don't often think of. You'd think, okay, if your computers crash, it's going to be downtime. You can't stay productive. Perhaps you can't open patient files. That's an issue. That's operational downtime. But there's a whole aspect around branding and reputation, and having information leaving your organization. So that may have not happened to you yet, and hopefully that's the case. You may be a little bit more familiar with computers going down, crashing, or something going offline. All of these things are elements of what could happen. Okay, so we'll touch base on a little bit about each one of these and how what you may be more vulnerable to. But I think this is a good starting point around considering, well, with branding and reputation, how do you put a price on that, and what control do you have on that at the moment? You've got your domain name, so who's managing that? You've got your website, who's managing that? Your social media, who's managing that? What happens if you get a whole bunch of negative Google reviews? There's spam attacks that happen there. This is where it affects your overall reputation, and there's sort of a flow-on effect, and there's no quick fix just to say undo. It's an ecosystem. It's like once the damage is done, it can be quite devastating. So we want to look at preventative, of course, and a lot of this stuff starts with awareness and essentially setting up a process so you know what you have, what to manage. Some of the more harsh ones would be like fraudulent transactions, and that stuff happens very quick, sooner and more easy than you think. So we're going to poke some holes in that so you can figure out if you're vulnerable in that situation. And then just loss of data. You've got your practice management systems. I imagine you would have a backup process through your provider, but how has that been tested? Is it actually, have they proven? They say they back it up, but has it been proven to restore, from period? How confident are you that that's going to be a solution that you can rely on? This is a slide here where essentially I wanted to talk about just how common it is. So we're talking about a situation where cybersecurity is like a combination of your assets, but also your access. So you've got a username and a password. So if you got your practice, we're talking about the practice owners here. You use your email all day long. We see this a lot. You use your email, but it's tied to your practice. Somebody add the practice name. You might use that to sign up for, say, a furniture company website, or you might use that for an Adobe subscription, or maybe you're using Canva for graphic design on the side, or somebody in your team is. Well, look at this. They've all gone through, and this is just going through A, B, C to Z. There's so many of them. Every major company seems to have had a breach. So that just means that your username and password that you used at that one point in time was released to the dark web, the hacker world. And that goes on file, and then they use those combinations to try to attack every other. They come back to you, so they're gonna try to test your website, and they say, okay, well, that's your domain name, so let's go to his domain name and see if I can log into his website with this password. And of course, you don't want to be reusing passwords, but it does happen. So I guess the point of this slide is to show you how common it is, and the idea that usernames and passwords are just not safe anymore. So that's the old world. The new way to protect your things is a new system. So we've got to look at that. Just to say, a lot of you, when you think of IT, you might be saying, well, that's my web company does that for me, or my IT company. They set up my emails, they come in here, set up all the workstations. They do all that for me. Okay, that's good. But it's important just to revisit that and understand what are they actually covering, because it's likely they're only covering a single aspect. So it might be their servers, or there might be the email setup, but they're certainly probably not connected to, say, the social media accounts or something a bit further out. So essentially, that is something to consider. Okay, so how do you know if you've been hacked? So I'll just start here on the sort of the top left. what's scary is often the customers will be the one to tell you. So they'll be browsing your website and they say, oh, I was trying to book online and I noticed it just wouldn't accept my information. And you just submit, 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 submit. And what's happening is that information they're submitting is going off to some other third party, a scammer basically. So it's scraping the information and it's interfering with that. So it might be show a sign like that where it's not a proper operation, or the website itself just is showing some inappropriate content, or maybe off to a casino link or something like that. Anything goes. Like there's really no logic to it. It's just however they can take advantage of that breach of access. So customers might tell you, you might get a ransom email, somebody saying, okay, dear practice owner, we've got control of your systems. You have 2 days to reply. That's a scary situation. That may or may not, they might be bluffing, or they might actually have some backdoor access, which you'd need to tread lightly and this is where we can advise you on and talk you through using your existing partners like your IT companies, or certainly we have a service that we look up for this also for you. So you can see there on the screen, there's a couple other scenarios. You may have had this before, especially when browsing Google. If you enter a login, Google might tell you, the Google Chrome that is, might say, oh, you know what, you're using that password. Don't use that password because we noticed that's been used in the public database of leaked passwords. So use a different password. So those kind of things can help. SMS notifications, you might get those triggered all the time. You haven't logged into anything, but you're just saying, oh, are you trying to log in? Are you trying to log in? So someone is hammering the system. So that's something you've got to wonder what's happening there. Okay, so it's a few things how you know, but ultimately, most likely, you may not know. You might not know in day one. You might find out 1 month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, when it's all the damage is sort of start to unravel. So that's what we want to avoid. And this is to point out that as tight as you can have your IT setup, your staff and your systems are still going to be vulnerable. And I'll show you this now. You think about your daily practice. You've got receptionists answering phone calls. You've got incoming. Essentially, it's going to be mostly on the phone. You've got emails that potentially could come in as well. And then you have this remote PC. So you've got workstations and you don't know exactly how much remote access is happening there. Perhaps if you've got something with OptomEdge and so on. But imagine this scenario. So the receptionist is there, picks up the phone, and you hear a voice. Hi there, this is David from the Web Registry Department. I just wanted to let you know that your domain name is due to renew soon, and the credit card we have is actually expired. So can I send you an email with the details? Sounds harmless. Nothing has been disclosed. Oh, okay. You just take it like, I guess so. I'll check into that. Can I send you an email? So you give them, what's happening there is the receptionist is going to give them their email, and then they're going to get a legitimate email, but it's got a scam link in there. So because they've already had that trusted conversation, she might just think, well, oh, that's that email they said they were going to send me, and the guard is down. What you don't realize is that's the scam. So, and then you're going to be in potential trouble. Those links can take over your workstations, and then from there, all sorts of things happen. So the workstation takeover is really a hard one, like screen recording and key logging, things like that. Because imagine anything you type into the machine is being captured and sent off. So for all the protections, that's those username and passwords, any activity being logged is quite a dangerous thing. So that's one to watch out for. As you can see, this is more of a social engineering type of attack. Okay. So how can you be sure that you can cope with a cyber attack? I don't know if you check your website's activity, probably not. This is something that's mainly with technology providers, but you would have logs of just how often your website is attempts are login attempts or hack attempts, or so it's all happening. You may not be aware of it. And then likewise, there might be phone calls coming in. Sometimes you catch them, let's say an automated robot, you think, oh, that's just a scam, hang up right away. Okay, fine. But sometimes there's others that can go undetected. So how sure can you be with all of this? So this is what we wanted to give you some takeaway points. Ultimately, as a call to action or something you can do about it, essentially take note of your systems, assets, and users. So those three things. It might be simpler than you think. You got your practice management system. You've got your, maybe your website, the way your website's set up, social media, and you've got different people. The less is better. still without having lots of different access. But eventually, over time, you tend to forget about things. Oh, there's a login somebody used 2 years ago. Those things don't go away unless you take care of them, delete them. The second one is ensuring MFA is used. So this is multi-factor authentication. So this is more than SMS that you might get once you log in, and it's more than like an email to validate. It's multi-factor. So there's multi things that you need to do to make sure that you can access it. We're going to cover that in a minute. Never use a password manager. You might have seen this with Google, Chrome, or Microsoft. They try to get you, hey, do you want to save that password for the next time? People would say, yes, yes, conveniently save that. That's a big problem because hackers can get access to that. It's a one simple step and they can get in there and they've got all your passwords. It may be encrypted, but it's one little step around just revealing them all. So that's big trouble. Anyone that's saving passwords, bad idea. And the fourth one there, makes cybersecurity someone's responsibility. That's really what we're saying here is that most people would say, oh, I don't know anything about cybersecurity. I hope it doesn't happen to me. I've got my IT company. I'm sure they've got me covered. It's just bigger than that. It's bigger than what an IT company is managing. Think about the social attacks. Think about the social media, the Google review, the reputation monitoring. Are people sending out invoices on your behalf with your logo on it? Lots of things that it starts with the awareness piece. So, okay. So then safeguarding, of course, you want to focus on what's going to be the biggest protection. Check with your banks, check with your insurer. You just want to make sure that you're never going to be out of pocket for something financially. Banks are very slippery here in Australia, at least. If you are responsible, they're going to try to avoid any responsibility. So if you happen to disclose some password or maybe your password is your birthday or something like that, they will not refund your money if money goes missing. And in the UK, it's different. They will actually, the banks take up some protection there and say, well, we understand it's not really your fault. But in Australia, there's nothing. New Zealand, I'm not sure just how evolved they are. But the problem is it's just not there yet. So there's not a lot of liability protection for that. Check with your insurer. So you might be going through the practice, every year you've got to have, insurance to operate your practice. They're going to have essentially cybersecurity elements to that now. You might need to disclose, hey, well, how are you protected and what steps are you doing? Are you having secure passwords and so on? If you don't do that, perhaps your premiums are going to be a lot different, higher. Or perhaps they won't insure you at all. So because it's that serious. Third one is check with your IT provider. Again, the general feeling, and I've worked with them, they're all lovely people, but they tend to be a little bit like dinosaurs, just caught in an old way, a very static way. And they may try to fix things after the fact, but I think this is very different. If you think about how quick AI is, you need to be on the forefront. You need to have solutions for that upfront. That is something that we offer. Okay, so phone number security. This is one that really catches people off guard, and I'll just continue to do a time check. I think we're doing okay. But having a look at the phone numbers, SMS verification is being quite normal. You log into your bank account, get the SMS notification, put in the code, and you can continue. Or any other secure system, Xero, for example, accounting systems, anything they know how serious it is to have a username password breach. That would be devastating because there's not a lot of ability to undo that. Someone can actually take over your mobile number. So that is a scary, scary thought. Did you know that mobile numbers are easily migrated to another SIM card, another phone? So that is just a fact. We can take you through how that's possible, but ultimately it's called phone number hijacking. So if you have this false sense of confidence that, oh, well, I get that SMS and I just need to enter that password. Well, someone could actually take over your phone number as well as your username and password. So once these hacks happen, all they need to know is, well, I've got the username and password. And in the same hack, usually they collected the phone number at the same time. Oh, that's probably the same SMS. Yep, sure enough. And then they managed to get it from the telco. So this is a problem really for the telecommunications companies. They have a fairly weak system, and hopefully that changes. But with the date of birth and the name, that's probably it. And that's why if you have things in the leak, if they've got into your emails and you've saved your driver's license or you've saved your birth certificate or something like that in there, bad idea. Never do that. Make sure you don't have those kind of ID, like we're talking about ID theft. That is going to cause you more problems as well. So this is principally for practice owners that are using their email just for your everyday life. Make sure that you think about what happens if someone gets access to that email account, what is actually in there. Okay, so I've got a slide here on how to protect yourself. Essentially what I said there, just put it on the phone company. So as an order of priority, I would understand, are you relying on SMS in some way in your business, even if your own personal phone? What's linked to that number? And then understand, well, who's managing? Is it New Zealand Telecom, the company there? Is it a self-serve account? Because if they can get access to that self-serve, that's a big problem. They could start initiating the transfer without your knowledge. Make sure that telco has a security protocol for that. That's what we're saying here. Okay, so now back to multi-factor authentication. More than just an email validation of the login or an SMS code, we're looking at apps. So there's a couple different ways to get authentication. You can if you have the iPhone, of course, you've got the face tracking, face login, and Android as well. Or you can have like a biometric, like a fingerprint scanner. Those are all part of it. So yes, those are levels of security, but ultimately, this authenticator app is pretty much the common one. So if you've ever tried to log into, say, Xero, the accounting system, or anything secure online, or even Google, like email, Google or Microsoft, they want you to log in with this authenticator app. So that is pretty much the way to do it. That is proving to be very, very secure. There's a downside though. So this is what it looks like. The Google Authenticator. Again, you may be very familiar with this, but I'll just put it up here anyway. Each system that you get to log into, so your Facebook login, maybe your Amazon, your Google, and so on, Instagram. There's one problem with that, and it is that if you lose your phone, that means that all of your access literally doesn't get approved. So you need those codes, and it's tied on your device. So ultimately, this is just a food for thought here. Make sure that your phone that you're using isn't something that you're taking out on the boat on the weekend. Have your device that you're using to authenticate fairly secure, as in not moving around with you. If you drop it and it breaks out there in the world, that's going to be very difficult. The way around that is to have backup codes. But then once again, you're essentially saving these backup codes. That's all a hacker needs. So somewhere in there, you need to find the common sense of it and balance the convenience versus the protection. Okay, so to make this relevant to you, I just want to be clear on what are the weak points in your practice. And we'll look at that here. So let's consider that this is the vulnerabilities. So if you want to look at, we chatted a little bit before about the PC and the workstations. So you've got where your staff are sitting down, they're doing dispensing. You've got perhaps Sunix desktop or Optomate desktop. Maybe there's a remote server that they're logging into. Those are all via this desktop computer, or a tablet perhaps. You would want to have the antivirus and scanning active on there, and just make sure there's a process so you're getting some update saying, yep, it's running clean. When was the last time it's updated? So that's something that you could do yourself. It's probably nothing that you need to do differently if you're already doing it. The second area is these extra providers that you might be subscribed to over the years. So you got Xero accounting system, My Health First has come in, they're doing online appointments. All those information, that's going to a separate provider. So they could easily get hacked, just like just like Adobe and these big companies get hacked. And then all of that patient data, these are your patients. All of the data is then out there and published. So it's a liability, let's say, right? And tools that you may use casually, like MailChimp or Canva, all those username login combinations, if you're using it for that, it's very possible to end up in a breach. So make sure that that password, whatever you're using for those, is not being used for something else more important, and just keep updating them. But take stock of what those systems are. Microsoft email, fortunately, this is pretty reliable. You got Google and Microsoft. If you're ever trying to get into your email, if you're using those systems, they force you to authenticate, and it'd be very hard to scam your way in there. But do have a think about if your email's running on like a private server, that's a liability. You need to make sure your web server and your email server has some security protocols. So, and that leads us to the last one here, which is, I'll try to get out of the way. It's this most common security gap for hijacking, for scammers to take advantage. That's who's controlling your domain name, the website itself, the server, and the email. It's just something that practices and most small businesses don't revisit. They set it up once when you first start your business. Maybe you renew the invoice once a year or once every couple of years, and after that, you don't think about it. So it definitely needs more attention. So that's where it leads us to sort of things that, again, you can do. Ultimately, you do need people. That's what we're saying. So it starts with yourself as the practice owner and understanding, what risk, where do you place yourself in the world of risk? You can see a lot of the information here. And how confident are you that you could recover from an incident? You may have someone that would take care of that for you. But essentially, we've covered off on user authentication. So that's just saying no more username and password combinations. It's just not safe. Make sure you've got an additional step. Then you've got having backups, because once you do have an incident, having a backup to rely on is pretty, it's just a lifesaver, right? So we're talking about a database, or if your computer goes down, you can restore it. If your website goes down, you can restore it. That's very, very important. So they call that disaster recovery. And that's something that potentially companies will charge a lot for. It doesn't need to be. It just needs to be included to make sure someone's doing it and they're checking it, that it works. User management, that's just saying how many people are accessing your systems. And then cyber monitoring. This is really that piece around it's someone's job just to make sure everything's running clean. There's websites that will tell you, oh yeah, you're on the hack list. It may not feel like it's an issue. Again, a lot of times it just means that they've collected your email from somewhere, and that's all it is. You haven't really been actually hacked per se. But the idea that someone knows who you are means that if they've collected your email address, means they're going to come to your website. That's just the way the AI system is built. So we don't want them to cause any damage on your website. Okay. So that leads us to pretty much getting close to the wrap up. But what is happening with your website is the question. If it's running on WordPress, that's a good thing because it's the most widely used system, but it does need maintenance and updating. That is where these essentially search engine, like if you get something wrong with your website, Google will punish you for that. You just fall out of the listings. And that can take a long time to be found on Google again. So it's an issue. Domain name, you never want to lose your domain name. It can happen quicker than you think. And imagine losing that. It's your business name, .com, .co.nz. That's not something you want to have in someone else's hands. And then the rest of it's relating to just making sure that email and the website's operating securely. Okay, so just to come back full circle on which one is the scam, I guess the quick answer is all of them could be the scam. The invoice one is particularly slippery because it's impersonation. You would recognize the invoice as something like, oh, that's my supplier, it's my frame supplier or my lens supplier. But the problem is the bank account information is not going where you want it to go. It's going to the scammer's bank account. So they're smart enough to know you've paid someone before. You gladly would pay them again, especially certain amounts if it looks right. But the bank details will be different. So we consider that cybersecurity. This is a social engineering, and there's ways to look out for it. A lot of this is just awareness and really questioning it. And everyone would tell you, anybody in cybersecurity says, just don't click the link. You have to live in this state of paranoia. We don't want that for people. But I think the more real examples, eventually they're going to run out of examples. But and this is why we're showing it to you now. So the QR code is another one. It's a blind link. Could link to a website, or it could link to a legal software that's going to hijack your machine. You just don't know. So QR codes is essentially a risk. We don't like to see them. It's just not something that's worth it at this time. And then keeping your credit card information. That's more of a classic scam. So all right, just checking the comments to see if there's anything. I'm sure you guys are taking this all in, and thanks for sticking with it so far. Ultimately, after this session is done, we'll continue to just share this information, which is, give us the information, give you guys the information that you can do yourselves, and but we know that you're busy, you may not have time to get into it, and that's something where you may like our help. to do that. So we'll share this information. And ultimately, what this is a new service that we're providing. We've got the history with iPro to run the website and run that e-commerce system for many years, and as well as other aspects of web hosting that we do for a lot of practices. But this is a cybersecurity specific program where we can, for the first package there, we can manage your existing setup. So we don't need to change anything. We'll run your backups, we'll monitor everything, make sure the firewalls are set up a certain way, make sure that domain name and reputation is, there's no red flags there, and keep an eye on things. So that's just a peace of mind, perhaps, is the package there. And then if you want to add and migrate and just have a fresh start and say, look, just give me the secure setup. What's that going to cost me? So that's all included is that second package. Okay. So again, we definitely seen what can go well and what challenges can exist with various practices. So we don't expect that technology is going to be something you spend a lot of time on. We're happy to give you the fast track configuration to just say that you're looking good, and then you can just move on with other things that you want to focus on. But we do a lot in the space of promotions and patient news, a lot of things that are the positive side, and spending time doing that. So we have a lot of them. Everything we do is system based, so it's easy to share, easy to roll out, not a big cost, not a big upfront overhead. And then we do offer some growth areas such as online shops. So we'll see how we can provide these kind of webinars going forward. And it's a good interactive discussion. And I see there Chris has said that this is important for practices to see, and that's what we want. Just get it out there, guys. And perhaps it's your strategic advantage, but I think it's just general good business, and it's a modern take. Again, cybersecurity is everywhere. Any IT company is going to try to pitch you something, but I think it's about the understanding and just understanding, okay, you've got yourself as the owner, you've got your staff. How do you help everyone just interpret this world and don't get caught on these? It happens so quickly, guys. That's the scary part. It's just so quickly, and I'm hoping that none of this has happened to you. That's what we want. But yep, and heading to 2025. So I guess that leaves us pretty much on time. I'll just pause for a minute. And there was a slide that I was wanting to include, and I'll just do that now because I think we have a couple more minutes. Yeah, of course, thank you to iPro for providing this environment. It's with anything digital, it's nice that you can participate live, and then after it's done, people can watch it back. That's when the real magic happens. So one of these slides here, I just wanted to show you, it didn't come up as I wanted, this one. So another thing, this is probably one of the most useful ones that I just to help illustrate that these are areas to look for. When you're thinking about how am I protected, think about your digital footprint. Think about the logins for each of these things. And do you think you're vulnerable or not? And it's up to you really to have your own knowledge of how these things are protected. When it comes to, ultimately, we can advise you on, I guess, an audit. And that's what we're offering for free for everyone. It's just let's have a look. Let's run you through the checklist. Just get in touch. It's the ipro@optomedge.com email. That's a authentic email. When that comes to our team, that we're just going to run through that. And yeah, we'll just keep this dialogue open. So with that, thank you for joining. And yeah, I'll just leave it open just in case anybody wants to put something in the chat, but you can expect a follow-up presentation to be shared. And I think we'll run through with Chris and Tom just to see what kind of topics and how often we can play our piece, just to share that with you all. Good. Good, guys. Thanks for your time. Enjoy your evening, and we'll catch you in the next webinar. Okay. Thanks, guys. See ya.